Larry Feldman is probably the most amazing trainer that I've ever experienced in this business. I've been in the car business now for 35 years, and I've seen quite a few trainers, and a lot of them are pretty good. I mean, really, I get something out of all of them that I've seen, really. But Larry is in another class. I really mean that. His training is literally riveting. A little while back, I sat in on his first training that I ever sat in on. It was for new hires. I still remember, I'll never forget it. About 25 people in the room who'd never sold cars before. And he started to do his training. And after 2 hours, I was in the back of the room and I raised my hand meekly and Larry stopped what he was doing and said, yes. And I said, maybe we should take a break. And literally, I'll never forget it. All 25 people turned around, looked at me and went, well, okay. And they turned back to Larry. And Larry looked at me and go, okay. And he kept going for another 2 hours.
Hello there. This is Ian Cott from the famous AutoHub Show, and I'm sporting my NADA hat. Comes in 3 colors. It's blue, red, and black. So there's 3 of them. These are the 2 other colors. If you're interested in one, the price is 100% free. All you got to do is pay for shipping. I have a limited availability. They're from a Texas company called Branded Bills, which unfortunately got them there 2 weeks after NADA. I would have been giving them out like candy, but there wasn't any. Shirts, I have a few left. They have my sponsors on the front. They have a cool quote on the back, which is from Walton, from Walmart, about customer experience, which is the theme of the show. Same thing. I have limited availability. They're in black only, different sizes. Just pay for shipping. Send me an email. Reach out if you want one. That's it for me. And on season 6, we're doing the one-on-one show today with another podcaster, Shasta Hadcock. Is that correct? Am I right? Haddock. I'm incorrect. That's why I messed it up. But she's also a podcaster in automotive and a chick who podcasts in automotive, and that's the name of her show. I'm not being harsh. So tell us a little bit more about you and more about how you got in the car business and more about how you got into podcasting.
It's quite the story to tell. So I, at the time of this recording, I am 30 years old and have been in the car business since I was 19, so 11 years. I entered the car business, I think, the same way every other person does, by accident. Was definitely never in the plans. Of course, I was only 19, so what plans did I have other than hanging out with friends and whatnot? Entered in the BDC role at a local Kia dealership, fell in love with the business so fast. Loved getting to help customers find their new ride, fell in love with Kia as a brand. Still to this day, a very loyal Kia follower. The last several vehicles that I've owned have been Kias. From there, went to the vendor side with SEP agency, social media marketing. Accidentally stumbled our way into starting up a BDC in 2019. And then that really kind of kicked off in 2020. So I took that over at the beginning of 2021. So we're on year 4 of that. Did not want to do that. They pushed me into it kicking and screaming because I was, I loved the team that I was leading on the Facebook side and everything that I was getting to do there. And BDC just seems so volatile, which it always is.
Yep.
They got me in there anyways, and I haven't looked back since. And now, as of November, we've also developed a new app for salespeople called Social Grenade, and started the podcast. Next month will be 2 years ago. Really more so, I think it got started because I was always trying to reach out to learn from people. Like, we would start to see trends in the BDC, like, a show rate would drop out of nowhere, or contact rates would drop. And so I would call around to different people and try to get answers. And very oftentimes was met with a little bit of harshness or being ignored. Like, people wouldn't help. And so I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And, I realized I didn't want to ever be that person that someone reached out to for help and I didn't give it to them. And so we started the podcast to kind of be that place to offer that help. And it quickly grew into something so much more. And now, as a solo podcaster now, I keep getting told that, you're lighting the way for women everywhere in the industry and letting them know it's possible and showcasing the ones who are doing a great job. And really, that's what keeps me driving every day.
Fantastic. I actually managed a Kia store for a brief time after I worked for Nissan, so I'm pretty familiar with that. And also, I did a stint for Proactive Dealer Solutions. So I set up BDCs all over North America for big brands and small brands. And I actually even did one for a store in the big town of Fort Capel, Saskatchewan. which has one intersection. So we
Oh
had one
boy.
BDC agent who did everything. So she called everybody, which was kind of funny.
Hmm.
And the funniest thing about that one from a BDC perspective is they had a private sale and the town's only 2,500 people. So they only called their customers. It was a General Motors store. And the owner got accosted at church saying, "Hey, how come I didn't get an invite to this store, this
Oh my
sale?" So it's like laughing at it. I'm like, dude, you probably should have invited everyone in the town. Like, I don't know
God.
what you're doing, but it was kind of funny. But yeah, BDCs can be volatile. I've worked for some of the best and also fixed some of the worst, and even some days had to close down some. But when you look at the industry, and it's a competitive industry,
Very.
sometimes dealers either don't know how to help you or don't want to answer questions because they feel it's a trade secret or something. I think that's
Hmm.
why 20 groups exist. If you check out my interview from Sean Nifkin from NCM, he talks a little bit about that. But when you're looking at being a woman in auto, obviously, as we talked earlier, very strong personalities, women in auto in general. Not that that's not true in other industries, but it's very tough to survive in auto, especially for women. I think today's a little bit better. What advice would you give to a lady who's considering getting into the auto industry, or maybe who's in it and is challenged with that reality?
Um, I would I would say find a network of other women who are already doing it. I have said it time and time again. Most of the podcasts I've done, ones where I've been a guest, I constantly say your network is your net worth. And the same is true for me. There's been times where I went through something and maybe didn't realize the scope of it until I talked to somebody else and got some similar feedback, or something happened where I didn't know, like, hey, is this normal? Is this okay that I got talked to like this or whatever? And so having a network of other women who are already doing the same thing, and even good men. And that's what I feel like we've got to hit on so strongly, is it's not just about women being powerful in the industry. Honestly, for years I probably had a larger network of good men than I did women. A lot of the women I came across were really catty, and the ones that wouldn't help me, and competing BDC companies even, and just flat out ignoring me, blocking me for no reason when all I was trying to do was learn. And yet I've got men in the exact same industry who will tell me anything I need to know, will hop on calls and talk with my team. Like, so it's not just about connecting with women, but build a solid network of good people. That's got to be key.
That's good. That's great advice. I mean, I've talked to people from all sides of the industry every single day, and obviously I do 2 live shows a week plus a recorded show. But before I did that, I mean, I've got 25 years in the industry, including 10 retail. I learned a lot from touching different sides of the business, but I learned from every single show that I do because I have different guests from different places, not only from North America, but from all over the world, including countries as far away as Georgia, the country. Even had guests on from India and different places in Europe. Actually, going to have an interview a lady who runs a high-end used car store in Ireland. Pretty
Nice.
interesting interview I'm going to be doing soon. But what I learned from other people in the industry is, number one, most of them want to share to help other people, but more importantly, they're going to know different things than I know. Even with 25 years in the business and a family history, I still don't know everything. And I've
Hmm.
learned a great deal in the last 30, 40 days just on the fixed ops side because I've been touched by a lot of other fixed ops people, even though I have experience in that side of the industry. What has been the biggest aha moment for you as you've done the 10 plus years in the industry?
Whew, that's a big one. Honestly, I mean, we've known over the last several years how quickly the industry can change. And I say it all the time, like, nobody sends out a memo when things are suddenly different. Like, you're doing your normal thing every day and suddenly it just stops working. Or, you start listening back to phone calls in the BDC and you're like, oh, I don't like that anymore. It doesn't hit the way that it used to. And so really, I think my biggest one probably it was either December or January, when I noticed a really big shift in how customers were responding to the BDC. We are always a team that, we tried really hard to stick to a type of certain script and a certain way of getting appointments and stuff like that, really big on making sure our show rate's really good. And suddenly listening to those calls, I was that person. I was like, this doesn't sound right anymore. Like, I don't like the way that our conversations are making customers feel. And so, we did a little bit of a pilot test where we changed it up for one store with their permission, of course. It went absolutely well. We started implementing it in more stores and really kind of changed the trajectory and the processing and what we do on the BDC. Whereas most BDC trainers out there would disagree with everything I do in my BDC now. And the difference is that I do it on a daily basis and most of them don't. And so I see what works and what doesn't. And it's working.
Yeah, I mean, I set up BDCs as I said, and the thing that always surprised me when I was doing that or even fixing them was, there's all kinds of people, especially on the sales floor, not to beat them up, but they're like, oh yeah, no, this appointment's crappy, or what are you saying to this person? It's like, well, do you want to come in here and actually do the work? No, it's not easy to do, but more importantly, doing it and adapting to that changing market. I mean, when I was doing it, it was mostly phone and email, but now there's probably more text and more video than there was then. But at the end of the day, it's really about consistent activity and really doing that. I trained a lady at a General Motors store. She used to be a receptionist for a medical office. She was a beast. I mean, she could handle 6 calls in a row, back to back to back, inbound or outbound. And she was a monster at it because she had that training, but more importantly, the skill set. And I remember the salespeople always wanted her appointments because they knew she did it right. But the example that I always use is I worked with a Hendrick group of stores in the greater San Francisco area, and we were training scripting on how to bring people in. And they had a different problem there, which was basically they were so scripted that people thought they were a robot. And this was 15 years ago almost. Like everything was so scripted and so dialed in that like the customers were like, okay, like I have a question. It was like we were taking them down this process, and it was like you could almost record them verbatim. Everything was the same. And the thing that's funny is when I look at when I ran an internet department at a Honda store that I worked at and ran, the thing was process. And I think the only thing that's changed is this: there's so much more that can be done with each customer today. I think David Long talks about phone, email, text. But I always thought the biggest challenge wasn't that. The biggest challenge was what's your long tail process? Not only to retain them as a service customer, but to maybe to find those sales customers that maybe you couldn't get over the first 30 days. And we did a show, I think it was a couple weeks ago now, on subprime and F&I and CRMs. And we had 2 of the pretty heavy hitters in that area talking about sort of the range of subprime today versus, I think I did a show at Used Car Week Toronto about 4 years ago. We had a panel of subprime people, and they were like, yeah, it's 25% subprime. And the dealers in the room almost fell out of their chair. They're like, what do you mean? And I got this update on the show, and they're like, yeah, in some cases it's 40% subprime. And I doubt most dealers realize that. Like, they're like, oh, yeah, we don't deal with those customers.
It's so different by market. Like we started off, I mean, the dealership that I started in was subprime, and the stores that we started off with, even on the Facebook side, on the BDC side, were mainly subprime. And those customers have to be talked to in a different way. Like you can't start off the conversation with, okay, what trim level are you wanting? Because they don't even care about a trim level. They just need something to get them from A to B. They don't want to have to keep taking the bus or asking people for rides. And so those conversations have to change. And then even as the industry has changed, I mean, we're coming out finally of all of the crap that came with COVID, and that changed the industry, not just the industry, that changed the whole world and the nation as far as what is subprime. I mean, what was subprime 6 years ago? Most dealers could get it done, and it would be super easy, knocking them out the door. The vehicles were priced better. Now we don't hardly have the vehicles for what's considered subprime, and the subprime sector really got so much bigger between inflation and everything else. Interest rates going up. I mean, we're all broke. Like we're all broke. And I think, we saw a huge increase in people getting credit lines and maxing those out and then realizing, oh my God, I have to pay these bills now. And so, the subprime market has grown, and it's bigger than what most dealers realize. Of all the times I've been doing this, I've probably only worked with maybe 3 dealers ever that are truly, truly, truly prime and don't touch a single subprime lead.
Yeah, I mean, what amazed me, thanks for that. What amazed me when I was at this panel, we had some Americans and Canadians on the panel, some with huge subprime operations and some who train in this area and different opinions. But I said to the dealers in the room, I said, okay, let's just say that number's 25%. You're ignoring those people. Like those 25% of people, someone's selling them something. I mean, it may be a bucket, maybe an old car, it doesn't matter. That person needs to drive. And the thing that was funny about it was they were just so flabbergasted with that number. But you look at companies like Agora is one that I'm going to be doing an interview on soon, which is another company that's kind of, revolutionizing that space. You look at the inventory, as you said. I mean, when you look at Carvana now going into retail, you've got Amazon going into retail. I mean, it's only a question of when there's going to be a new process for that. But when you're dealing with a customer that has that problem, it's generally not a permanent problem. Like they generally tend to recover from that over time. I think the challenge now is you've got people that maybe paid over list or over the Moroni sticker in the pandemic for a car, and now they're buried. And that's not just in domestic cars anymore; it's in a Honda. Like, they paid 10 grand more for that Honda, and now it's like they're upside down and they want a lower payment. So I think it's really interesting just from a features point of view. I've been reading a lot of articles lately on what if we decontented vehicles to make them affordable. And I know Chrysler got in a little trouble. They were marketing to customers directly in their car, which I thought was hilarious because Tesla's been doing that for years. But when Stellantis does it, it's like, how dare you market to me through my entertainment system on my overpriced car? I thought that was hilarious. But what do you think is going to happen on the used car side and on the, obviously we're going to be dealing with tariffs, which is going to make it even more interesting. But what do you think is going to happen in terms of making those cars more affordable for the younger generation who maybe can't afford a $55,000 sedan?
I mean, I'm big on, and you mentioned David Long earlier. I'm really, really big on believing in vehicle acquisition centers, or a BDC, a vehicle buying center. We've got to put more focus on getting vehicles other than just as trade-ins or from the auction. There's plenty of vehicles out there that we can buy and put you in a better financial situation where you don't have to, essentially rip off the customers. And there's a reason why they're transitioning to work with Amazon and with Carvana. And it's because they don't trust us. And that's a conversation that we've been having for years as an industry. And not just that, but the transparency. So we were always trained. When I came in the business, the training was always, you're not selling the car, you're selling the appointment. Don't talk about the car. And that's all the customer wants to know about nowadays. Like we can't get past talking about the car anymore. You may be in very, very subprime situations, may be able to talk about financing instead of the car, but even still, you're going to get yourself in a pickle if you don't. So, we've got to be making it more affordable for them, and we've got to be making it easier and more transparent for them because they will not do business with us, one time or continued if we're seeming like we're hiding something or lying to them.
So what do you think about leasing and how leasing's going to change? I was talking to my brother who lives in Los Angeles. His wife's a fickle car buyer. So she buys a car and then she complains about it. And then he buys another car and then she complains about that. And I said, well, what are you doing paying cash for a car every 2 years? That's got to be the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, just lease it. But what do you think about leasing on the subprime side? Do you think that's something the manufacturers are going to get into just to try and mitigate that?
I don't see why they would. It would be interesting to see it for sure, but the leasing customer, so different parts of the country have like way more interest in leasing than others. Like I live smack dab in the middle of the Midwest, and other than maybe one or two people, I don't know people who lease. We finance here. That's just what we do. However, when we had dealerships in Southern California or upstate New York, it was more leases than purchases. And so it's definitely regional, and I think that we can't generalize everything by one statement.
Right.
And those are probably never going to change. Like they're just going to keep finding ways to increase the leasing process for areas like that, and for the people like that who want to keep changing their leases. But I think leasing for subprime would be great. Give them something to where they're not buried in an interest rate for 8 years on a car that won't make it that long,
Yeah.
and allow them to prove to you that they can make payments and be responsible, and then let them upgrade to something newer and nicer, which almost kind of goes back to a buy here, pay here method, but without overcharging them by double.
Yeah, I mean, I worked with some dealers when I with Nissan in the big province of Saskatchewan. It's kind of like North Dakota, and their clients are pretty much farmers. Like that's
Mhm.
kind of the stick. So they roll in, and a lot of them are Amish. So they roll in, or they're Hutterites, which is another sect similar. They roll in after the harvest, and they pay cash, and then they come
Mhm.
back like 3 years later, and then they want to buy another car, and they pay cash, and they'd always be upset because of the value. And I said, well, why don't you do a prepaid lease? They go, what do you mean? Oh, just pay it, prepay 2 years. And then at the end, you just give them another car. They prepay 2 years. And they said, well, how does that work? I said, well, it's a cash buy, but you're buying less.
That would
And they
be exclusively great for tax time when these people have, sometimes up to $10,000 back from taxes, and then they're gonna blow it that month. We all
yeah,
know it. So either they use that as a down payment, or I mean, crap, pay it forward on the lease, and that would be a good opportunity for those people who, normally may not have the credit to lease.
yeah, I mean, I trained them how to do it, and they were shocked they went from like zero leasing to like 20% immediately, because when they had that conversation, it was a different conversation. It was like,
Mhm.
listen, you're going to come back and see me in 2 years and hate me. That's going to happen. Like it's happened before, it's happening again. Why
Mhm.
don't you not have that problem? Why don't you keep the extra money and do this? So it's kind of interesting just from a point of view of a different market. I mean, I also worked in the greater Vancouver market, which is similar to Seattle. It's all high leasing, especially in high end cars. And I worked at a Honda store where it was probably 45%. But the
Mhm.
highest number I ever heard was Brian Benstock. He talked about 75% lease penetration in New York City area. But the reason is how we marketed to the lease customers, but more importantly, how we got them to come back. So that was lease retention after they'd leased. And he was just
Mhm.
very aggressive at going at them with a daily or monthly payment, where basically they showed up and they just changed keys. I don't
Yeah.
know what he's doing these days, but the thing that was interesting was, as we look at younger generations who maybe don't have the disposable income that their parents have, they're still going to need a ride. They just can't afford a 30, $40,000 sedan and a payment to go
Mhm.
with, and they probably don't want to finance it for 96 months.
Mhm.
So I think leasing is going to be interesting, especially when you look at what's happening with, say, BMW as a brand versus Tesla as a brand, where they traditionally have subsidized. And now it's kind of like, okay, well, how do I get someone to buy a 3 Series when it's 45 grand when it used to be 30, right? I mean, I
Mhm.
think that's the big thing. So when you look at the BDC and you look at call volume, which has always been sort of the historic thing, do you see technology and call volume sort of the technology being more important, like the touch points versus the call volume?
Yeah, for sure. We've definitely seen an increase in contact rates via text as opposed to phone calls. And that's not to say that phone calls don't matter. There's definitely some people who will only talk on the phone, or, prefer that just so they can hear your voice, or feel that they can communicate better over voice. And
Right.
so, I mean, phone calls will always be important, but the level of importance versus text message and email is definitely changing. Like, where when I was in the BDC, the dealership that we were at, we weren't allowed to text. Like, texting did not exist. So we had phone calls and emails, and that was it. And now, I mean, my BDC is probably what, 60, 30, 10. 60% conversations happen over text, 30 on phone call, and 10 over email. So it's all in the strategy that you have. And it doesn't just mean sending a text message with, "Hey, it's Shasta at ABC Motors. Are you ready to come in for a test drive?" Like, it's not that. It is
Yeah.
not that. So making sure that our messaging is on point will help ensure the communication levels there. But to your point, technology matters. Like, how you're doing all of these things. Is it omni-channel? Can you see all of your call, texts, and emails in one place? Can you hear a call recording and read through the text messages at the same time? Or do you have 7 different dashboards to do all of this in?
And do you feel that that's generational? Like, do you feel that that's because you have about 40% millennials and younger out there in the market? Or do you think it's just that people are more accepting to a text message versus a phone call?
Um, there's a lot that's changed. I think, if we look at even boomers really are really accepting of cell phones. Most of what you have to do nowadays is you got to look it up online and have access to your phone at all times. So they're even more accepting of it. And then we look at the millennials, that's kind of the category that I fall into. And you'll definitely reach me via text way faster than you'll reach me via phone call. Because if that phone number pops across my screen and I don't know who it is, I'm not answering it. Now, friends and family, my husband calls me, sure, I will answer that. Like, it's different. If I know who you are, I will answer your call. And then the younger generation, even younger than me, they hate phone calls. They absolutely hate them. So I think the biggest way to get in touch with them would definitely be text, unless you can start finding ways to DM them on Instagram, because that's where they all are, is Instagram and TikTok. So yeah, it's definitely changing generationally, and what we prefer. I think social anxiety is getting a little bit worse, as far as people don't like to leave their houses and have to go meet with strangers face to face. It's intimidating. And
Right.
so the more they can do from home without having to actually physically talk to somebody, they're going to keep doing it.
And what's your thought on chatbots, AI-based phone systems, and of course the use of video uh, with like a
It,
two-way video kind of scenario, or even sending recorded video?
yeah, it's important. I mean, when we section out AI and look at it alone, I don't know that it's safe to go ahead and say it can operate on its own. I've seen some really freaking impressive AIs out there. Listen to a phone call of one where there was a person talking to an AI bot the whole time, and they almost didn't know it. Like, and so some of them are really impressive, but it's supposed to be there to help assist the human touch. I think that it's safe to say that there's pretty much nobody out there. There's going to be people, it'll be like 5%, who do not want to transact with a human being at all. Because there's going to be questions that only a human can answer. And so our job is, as humans, is to make the transaction relatable and build a relationship with that person. I don't want to have to jump from dealership to dealership to get a good experience. I want it to be a one and done. I want the dealership that I am investing my money in to buy my car, I want them to treat me well every time I go, so that I don't have to think about, okay, if they're not going to pay attention to me in fixed ops, then I'm going to go somewhere else and get something else done. But I don't want to have to do transactions at multiple dealerships, and I don't want to have to start that anxiety of trying to find something somewhere else. And so that's just me personally, but we've got to focus our human efforts on doing what we do well as humans, and that's connecting with people. And I think AI's best place is the mundane task work of attempting to make contacts in the CRM, like especially on the BDC side.
Right.
That is a great tool to use for that purpose. It can do automated follow-up for you. Reach out to people after so many years, but it's being overtaken and being used for other things that it shouldn't be used for, I think.
Right.
But in the same sense, our humans aren't being as good at being humans. They're being the same, I hate to say it, same sleazy salespeople they've always been. So
Bad human.
yeah, it's we have a lot of changes to make, and it's rough, because by nature, people in the automotive industry don't like change. I mean, I'm one of those people. I hate change. It takes me a long time. And so, for me to see it and be able to forecast it this much in advance, and if we don't change, it's going to hurt, especially with all the changes that have happened recently. So we got to get on board.
Thanks for that. And obviously you have guests on your podcast. What type of guests? How did they find out about you? How did they get on the podcast? How did they listen to it?
I've had all sorts of guests. Gosh darn. So NADA 2025, I know you were podcasting there too. We got hosted by Authenticom to to podcast in their booth. I think I did around 30 interviews in 2 days, and had people from Glenn Lundy, Kate Borowski, Mike Stanton of NADA, Steve Cottrell, the CEO and founder of Authenticom. I mean, I had all sorts of people on there. And I like talking to everybody. Everybody brings a different level of conversation. And, probably my most popular ones would be the ones of women who are in the dealership, or anybody who's in the dealership, in the trenches, and what they're doing to make a difference in their dealership that maybe you don't see in other places. but I'm super active on social media. So I get a lot of people who reach out to me with interest, and there's people I'll turn away, like, or I will make them have a really long conversation with me before I will accept them as a guest on the show. Because it's my podcast is not a place for you to advertise your business. If you want that, then sponsor me. But other than that, like, I want to know about you as a person, and I don't want us to sit there for an hour-long commercial.
100%. You know, I was supposed to be at NADA 2 days earlier than I got there because of weather. I was trapped in Atlanta, and I think I had like 40 interviews booked, but then a lot of people either didn't make it or canceled or whatever. I think I ended up with about 20-ish. Some are still to be released because it's a big company. Velo was the sponsor for the show, and you know it's approval and whatever that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I interviewed a whole range of people from different sides of the business. I usually do at least 10 ambush interviews, but I just didn't have the time because the schedule got so truncated.
Oh, it was crazy. I mean, that.
But it was interesting just because of the tightness of the schedule, I got more done in less time. So it was all good. But yeah, I mean, generally when I do NADA, it's usually somewhere between 20 and 40 interviews plus ambush stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to next year, even though I'm not a Vegas fan, because I think it'll be a lot more organized. And hopefully we won't have snow.
Yeah, gosh dang, who would have ever guessed snow in New Orleans?
Well, it was more snow than they've had in 130 years, I think.
Yeah,
So
that was wild. We had to drive down. So I mean, luckily we were, not all the way across the country where that was feasible, because we had a whole thing of podcast equipment to take with. And the big thing was, it wasn't just a couple of canceled flights. The entire airport closed for a whole day and a half. And so everybody's already filling up all the flights in the side airports to drive in. All the rental cars are gone. So we made the very, very fast decision of, we're just going to drive. And that was the best move we could have made. The roads weren't horribly, horribly bad where we had trouble getting in. But once we made that decision to drive, it was smooth sailing from there.
And you had to know how to drive in snow. They don't, clearly.
Yeah, we're in the Midwest.
Some snowmen that were kind of questionable and some rake events.
Yeah.
The funniest was a guy, and we were trapped in Atlanta for a couple of days, and this guy in Atlanta thought it'd be a really good idea it was -7 degrees Celsius when I was there. It was colder than where I was from, which was funny. He made his own flamethrower and thought it'd be a good idea to melt ice on asphalt. And I was just waiting for him to light himself on fire trying to do this. Not understanding he was just creating more ice, but
Yeah.
it's not
No,
great.
it just refreezes. Unless you salt it or whatever, it just refreezes. So melting it does you no good.
And you were talking a little bit about Social Grenade. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so like I said in the very, very beginning, we started off in social media marketing, the agency, SCP agency. And so people who've known us for longer may know it even as Social Climber Pro. But our big thing was training people at the dealership and doing social media marketing for the dealership itself, but then teaching the salespeople how to be intrapreneurs and create their own social media presence. But this was like 2013, 14, 15, 16, way before TikTok, before social media really took off. And we're trying to teach them how to build their book of business and their brand on Facebook. And just over the years, just people kept saying, like, it'd be really great if I didn't have to think about this, or if I didn't have to think about what to post, or if I just knew what I needed to post. And so hearing it enough times, we're like, you know what, let's fix this. So in 2023, the conversation started of, okay, well, let's build an app where, we have all of their posts already built out. It has a strategy behind it as far as getting engagement and building a presence online, and then also selling cars where they can do it organically and don't have to pay Facebook. And so, a lot of work went into it, and it finally went live November 30th, 2024. So we're right at the 4-month mark of it being live, and it's blown up. It's definitely, of all the companies we've had, it has by far the most interest. Every vendor we talk to, every salesperson, every dealer we talk to, they're like, oh my God, this is genius. Why didn't we think of this? And so it's really awesome. It's needed for the industry because all of the general managers at the stores are telling the salespeople, be posting on Facebook. You need to be posting on Facebook, but they're not telling them what to post. And so we solved that problem of what to post. And it's actually going really well. And very exciting. So it's taken over a lot of our attention lately because we're finally at the point of selling it, and it's almost too much to keep up with. It's a lot.
It's awesome. Very I had I think it was Nisbo Nick on. He's like a Nissan He's like the ultimate Nissan car salesman fanboy. And I think he
Hmm.
sold last year. He sold almost 100 Nissan Zs, and Nissan got interested because they're like, "How are you doing this?" Because he's like in Arizona or something, but he's selling
Yeah.
them everywhere. And it was kind of like there's a super fan Honda guy that I know, and there's actually a buddy of mine in Toronto who's a Greek guy at a Toyota store, and he does these crazy videos where it's like one take crazy videos every day.
Hmm.
Toyota had the same. They're like, you should come down to California and teach us how to do this because we have no idea what you're doing, but we like it.
Yeah.
So it was kind of funny because I think years ago I think it might have been Used Car Week. I don't know. It might have been NIADA. And Gail Rubenstein, a good friend of mine, and to be transparent, sponsor of the show, she did a group session with general managers doing a TikTok video in sections. And it was
Hmm.
hilarious to watch these general managers trying to do TikTok videos because it was like,
Oh,
ooh, these guys really should be doing this.
no. And the funny thing is they wouldn't make it as
Yeah.
salespeople nowadays. You know, if their boss was telling them you need to be on social media, they'd quit their job and go work somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I worked at a Honda store back in 2006. I was doing social media myself to promote what I did. I think it was 2005, 2006. And the dealer got in trouble from Honda because of some of the stuff I was posting.
No.
But, oh yeah, it was hilarious. I was on a day off and I got a call from the dealer. You will take this video down today. It
Oh
was
no.
kind of hilarious, but at the same time, like I was just out there promoting what I did, and
Yeah.
you know, I've been on LinkedIn since 2005, so you know, a long time. But I was doing stuff on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube that nobody was doing at the time, and the reason was, to me, it was about selling vehicles, and then that was my job. So I was probably the only person where I lived doing that. But when you look at it today, and there's videos a lot on LinkedIn I see, including I think Bowtie Mercedes guys have been doing stuff interesting, which is kind of funny. But you know, I mean, people don't understand that actually it's the service side of the business that gets a lot of traction, not so much the sales side. I mean, that's what shocked me. What Gail was saying, she said the service TikTok videos get something like 10 times the views
Yeah. There
because like everyone wants to know what those guys do.
Yeah, service is an anomaly because we don't know what's going on behind the shop doors. You know, we're facing the advisors when we visit as customers, and like, what the hell are they doing back there? Like, they're elbows deep in an engine, but what do they do? And
Yeah.
so it's something that we don't know about. And of course, us as a nation, you know, speaking specifically of the U.S., like, we're just curious souls. We want to know shit we don't know. And so the more that we can learn about, you know, the techs, and something that a lot of people outside the automotive space don't know is how much training and schooling they have to go through. When we're looking on the OEM side, like the master techs and everything like that, they think about how much vehicles change, and they've got to stay on top of every change made with those vehicles, every new feature, how to fix different brakes, how to replace it, how to know if it's that thing that broke. And so, I mean, their level of knowledge, like, they have to be even more educated than anybody on the sales side. So that's probably why, because it's an enigma, like, getting to know them and what they do. And I mean, why wouldn't you want to be friends on Facebook with the guy who works on your car? Like, I want to know what this guy's up to.
100%. I mean, there's a guy in my building has a Toyota pickup, and he got it the oil change at like Jiffy Lube or something, and he had to basically fix it himself because the guy didn't do it right. And I said, really, like, you took your whatever, however much you paid for this pickup to like a dealer, and then not a dealer to a independent, and you're shocked they didn't know what they're doing. And I said to him, I said there was a post, I think it was on LinkedIn, some guy with a Lamborghini Urus who's getting an oil change done at Jiffy Lube, and I'm like,
Oh my
wow,
god.
you're dumb. But I think there'd be a
Yeah.
really interesting channel to do on YouTube or somewhere else where it's basically like, you know, technician stories or something would be really
Yeah.
interesting. Just because I had a question from a friend of mine today, like, well, do you think technicians could shoot videos and have a two-way video with the customer or send a video? I'm like, yeah, when I
No.
was with Pure Effects, we tried to train them to do that. It's like these guys, you don't really even want them talking to a customer, let alone a video.
No.
They're
No.
probably going to comment on the dealership they work for, and like they're rough around the edges, man. Like,
Yeah. These guys are generally not PC. You know, they're vile and foul and hilarious. And, you know, we see that all the time with stories that come out on Facebook or on the news or whatever about, there was one not too long ago where someone in service, I want to say it was a tech, had put a note on the oil change sticker for somebody else, thinking he would see it and catch it with, I believe it was a racial slur, if I remember right, or something like that. He didn't notice it, left it in the car, like, put it on there,
yeah,
customer saw it and it was bad deal. But that's the kind of guys that majority of the time are in service. And so, they're not customer facing for a reason, and they have that freedom to let their mind be open to all of the things they have to do technically.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that there were, I guess I would say, nudie calendars in every service
Right?
bay.
Oh my
I'm sure that
goodness.
still exists today. But the thing that's really funny isn't that is I've trained in a lot of different service departments, technicians and service writers. But I remember training at this store in Oregon, and they had two service teams. They had 60 service bays and 30 on each side. And the teams were different colors, and they didn't even work with the other team in the same store. Like they refused to work with them. And it was
Mhm.
funny because I remember we were training these techs on using a tablet to do an inspection digitally. And the guy's
Mhm.
like, just get out of my bay, dude. I'm not doing that. Like, I got a piece of paper and a clipboard. Like, I'm not using a tablet. You got to be kidding. Like, I'm not
Mhm.
doing that. And it was funny
Yeah.
because they're so territorial versus, say, a service writer who's dealing with customers all day long. And it'd be kind of like, I guess, your used car salesman from 1985 going on video today and talking about, how he put that customer together.
Ooh, that would be dangerous. I would not want to see that.
Yeah, if you look at like what's that movie? I think it's Matilda or Used Cars where they talk about this stuff, and it's like, just shady,
Oh
shady
my,
used car stories. Yeah,
we're out of touch. Like the rest of the world is out of touch with the automotive industry, and I think I see that sometimes, like if anybody watches Cobra Kai,
yeah.
that there's a
Oh,
lot of happening in a dealership there, and you're like, that's
yeah.
still not right. That's still not right.
Yeah. So thanks for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. Obviously, there will be details below on how to reach out and get on the podcast, but also information about Social Grenade. It's called. Am I correct?
Hmm.
Fantastic. And have yourself a great weekend. If you are around today, this video probably won't be up, but we're doing a show today on technicians. So there's going to be a panel of technicians on to answer questions. So it should be very entertaining being a live show. I'm not quite sure how it's going to go, and that's what makes it interesting. So that's why I
For
do
sure.
live shows. But it'll be very, very interesting. And if you're interested in the tariff situation, next Monday I'm doing a show on tariffs. So that's going
Wow.
to have some interesting guests talking about data, but more importantly, the integration of these countries that make vehicles and what that's going to mean. I've heard all kinds of thoughts on all sides for new and used pricing, but I am not an expert, so I'm listening to what people have to say. And have
For sure.
yourself a great day. Thanks very much.